Next, from Springfield, we talked to Knox Williams, president of the American Suppressor Association, about legislation that would allow for the sale of gun suppressors. This runs about 10 minutes.
Knox Williams, president of the American Suppressor Association. Thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. About a year ago, we went out to a firing range with some other reporters and with Todd Vandermeide of the Illinois NRA. And the issue was so that the reporters could hear how a suppressor on a gun sounded. Now, the layman, such as myself, refers to them as silencers, and probably for a lot of us, the only connection we have are watching them in movies and TV shows. Let's talk about what is a suppressor and does it silence a gun?
Yes, sir. So a suppressor is basically anything that muffles or diminishes the report of a firearm. Also commonly referred to as silencers, but they reduce the noise of a gunshot by about 20 to 35 decibels. It's physically impossible for anything that you put onto a gun to completely eliminate the noise of a gunshot. There's far too many noise sources for it to do that, but they're able to reduce it by about the same level as common earplugs or earmuffs or other traditional hearing protection devices.
And the reason that we're talking is that there is an effort to pass legislation here that would allow for the sale of suppressors in the state of Illinois. How many other states allow for the sale of suppressors? People might hear say, why do you want to do that? Just so you can, unless you're going to join the mob, why do you want to have a suppressor?
Sure. So suppressors are one of the best and most effective ways to help protect recreational shooters and hunters' hearing. Most hunters don't wear hearing protection when they're in the field, and because of that, by the time you hit retirement age, if you're a hunter, you've almost resigned yourself to the fact that you're going to have to go out and buy hearing aids if you want to hear anything. By letting shooters use suppressors, this can help tremendously diminish noise-induced hearing loss, tinnitus, which is the constant ringing of your ears, and make shooting sports and hunting much safer endeavors.
And for those who are not into the gun sportsmanship, people will go out to a shooting range and might spend several hours out there shooting, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you're not using a suppressor, and if you're not using earplugs, you can, as you just mentioned, really damage your ear. What about the argument people might say, why do we need suppressors? Why don't we just have people use earplugs?
Well, people already do. A lot of people do wear hearing protection, traditional hearing protection like earplugs or earmuffs. However, you still have high incidences of noise-induced hearing loss and tinnitus amongst target shooters. I just read a study recently that said if you're a regular hunter or sports shooter, that for every 5 years that you shoot, you increase your likelihood of permanent hearing damage by 7%. That's a pretty tremendous raise, and that's assuming that people are using hearing protection that's currently available on the market in the form of earplugs or earmuffs. And I know I sound like a bit of a broken record with that, but a lot of the times people don't understand how to get a proper seal. Using earplugs and earmuffs, their effectiveness is contingent directly upon you getting a proper seal either of your ear canal or of the muff around your ears. Generally when you're shooting, you're going to want to wear shooting glasses, something to protect your eyes as well. If you're wearing shooting glasses and you have earmuffs on, that creates holes in that seal. That reduces the effectiveness of earmuffs tremendously. And because of that, people can lose their hearing in that way. Safe hearing levels are based on both the noise level that you're exposed to and the duration that you're exposed within a 24-hour period. So even if you get that noise level down to what's considered hearing safe by groups like OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, it's still dependent upon how long you're out at a shooting range exposing yourself to those noise levels. So even if you have double hearing protection that might not always be enough dependent upon how long you're actually shooting.
When you use a suppressor and you're, let's say, at a shooting range and you're shooting for several hours, would you encourage shooters to also use earmuffs?
I do, absolutely. Especially if you're at a range and you're shooting multiple shots. If you're out in the field, a lot of suppressors will bring the noise level of a gunshot down to below what's considered to be hearing safe, and that's great. Any step that you can take to reduce the noise that a shooter or a hunter is exposed to is a step in the right direction, in our opinion.
And the other thing is, if you are shooting or hunting, the fact of the matter is you might be a better neighbor and not waking up the baby or something with your gunfire. if you're using a suppressor. So.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. It makes shooters and hunters much better stewards of the environment and much better neighbors and considerate of their surroundings.
If this were to pass in Illinois, and again, I think there's 42 other states that have already allowed for the sale?
Correct, yeah. 42 states allow for civilians to own and possess suppressors. Iowa was actually the most recent state that was signed into law back on March 31st of this year. And there are 39 states in which hunters can use suppressors in the field.
And if we looked at a map of the United States, what's the next nearest state from Illinois that one could buy a suppressor?
Every surrounding state.
So the only one from either of the coasts, I think New York doesn't allow it, California doesn't allow it, so we're like an island of a suppression-free zone.
Yes, sir. Illinois is an island.
If we pass this as a state, would it have, to your estimation, any economic benefit to the state?
Absolutely. There's a number of manufacturers within this state that I think would be introducing their own models of suppressors for sale. In addition, suppressors are one of the fastest growing segments of the firearms industry. Illinois is obviously missing out on that because they're not available for civilians to use. However, I think that if suppressors were legalized, you'd see a tremendous increase in folks going out to their dealers, pumping money back into their local economies, buying suppressors.
And we do have some gun manufacturers also in Illinois. I guess they could look to start a product line.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And then lastly, and I've heard of all the gun violence in Chicago and all the murder, and it's on the minds of a lot of lawmakers, especially from Chicagoland area. Do you hear from those that might say, we've got enough murders and sometimes we only capture the bad guys because if somebody hears a shot and they call the police? What about the argument that someone could be murdering someone with a suppressor and then maybe no one hears about it and they just get away?
Well, first off, I'd ask them if they'd ever actually heard a suppressor in use. If you have, you know that these things don't silence the report of a gunshot, that the gunshot's still audible and outside of the context of shooting would be considered a very loud noise. I'd also ask them to look at the crime statistics. Suppressor use in crime is almost a statistical anomaly. The ones that are being used in crime are illegally manufactured. They're not registered with the ATF to begin with. And if this law is passed and signed into law, that won't have any impact. Those people who are going out there and making their own suppressors out of PVC pipe and tool and things that you can get at a Home Depot or a Lowe's, they're still going to do it whether or not civilians can legally do it themselves. All this does is allow law-abiding citizens to go out and purchase suppressors through the proper legal methods.
And do you know the legislation here that's trying to be passed?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, do you know the bill number?
I believe it's House Bill 433.
Right, Knox Williams, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.